Hey guys, I want to share a really cool story that I recently heard that I think is applicable to every single one of our lives. A doctor friend of mine recently got back from a medical mission trip to Uganda, Africa. And while he was there, he was thinking he was going to be working on a lot of foot injuries because he is a podiatrist. But when he got there, the doctor who he's expecting to work with had had a loss in the family and she had to go. So my doctor friend was stuck seeing all the medical needs of all of the patients at the clinic that he was going to be staying at. And so he was testing and treating things that he hadn't done in a long time. He said it was a huge challenge, but he had to step up. He said it's amazing how a lot of your training comes rushing back to you in those moments of need. The really amazing part of my friend's story takes place on a Saturday when the medical clinic is always closed. And a man who had been working on a building had punctured his foot, and he came to the doctor and said, "Doctor, please, can you please help my foot?" And of course, this is right in my friend's area of expertise. So he said, "Well, yeah, the clinic's supposed to be closed, but let's open it up and let's look at your foot." And my doctor friend said he was expecting to just take something tiny out of the man's foot, but he said he pulled a 2 or 3 inch splinter, like a giant piece of wood, out of the bottom of this worker's foot. My friend said he was amazed. He said, "What would have happened to this guy if I hadn't been there?" But the story gets even more amazing from there, because while the clinic was open, a young girl named Patricia came and asked the doctor to look at her foot as well. She said she'd stepped on a hoe and it had hurt her foot. It had been causing her a lot of pain. And so my doctor friend said, "Boy, we better look at that. That's another area of my expertise. I wasn't expecting to even be at the clinic today, but let's look at this young girl named Patricia." And I want to show you a picture of Patricia. There she is right there. The doctor was expecting to look at her foot and clean it to make sure there was no infection. And when my doctor friend looked at Patricia's foot, he didn't find a minor wound with a little infection. Instead, he found a growing abscess had developed in her foot that he said if it hadn't been treated, in a matter of days, maybe a week or so, she would have gotten sepsis and died. My friend wasn't even expecting to be at the clinic that day, and yet here is a young girl who needs his help or she is going to die. My doctor friend said, "Who would have treated Patricia if I hadn't been there to see her? There wouldn't have been another podiatrist around with the expertise to know what they were seeing and know what they were looking at and knowing what to do." God sent my friend to the clinic that day to save little Patricia's life. And you might be saying, "Bo, that's a really cool story of how God used a doctor to save a sick little girl, but what does any of that have to do with me?" And what I would say to you is this. 2 Timothy chapter 4 verse 2, Paul says that we should be ready in season and out of season to teach the things of God and be the people of God. And what that means, in season and out of season, means there are some times where you can prepare and know that God wants to use you. But then there are other times, out of season, where you're not going to really know what God has planned, but you have to be ready in the moment. Just like my doctor friend had to be ready. He wasn't planning on being at the clinic, but God was planning on him being at the clinic that day and sent Patricia right to the clinic door. The second passage I want you to remember is Ephesians 2, verse 10, where God tells us in His Word that He has good works for us to do that He has prepared from beforehand. They are just for us to do. Just like my doctor friend was sent to do all kinds of good in Uganda, but especially, I think, to save this little girl's life. There are good works that God has prepared just for you and I to do. And no one else is planning to do them except us. And if we'll just step up when the moment presents itself, God will use you to do incredible things. Oh, you may not be a surgeon, you may not be a doctor, you might just be a regular old person like me. But when God presents the opportunities, will you step up? Will you say, "God, I wasn't planning on this today, but I'm ready. I'm ready to be used to make an impact in this world for your glory and other people's good. I'm ready in season and out of season to do the good works that you have planned for me to do." My friend, you are not on the sideline. You are not a useless piece of God's plan. He wants to use you to do great things. And if you'll just be ready and willing to step up when He presents the moment of need, I believe He will do awesome things through every single one of His children. I hope that you hear this story. I hope it encourages you. I hope you look up those passages and allow God to speak to you through them. You guys have an awesome day. God bless.
The Acholi people, they'd been through a lot in their lifetimes, and some kind of interesting things about them. They went through the longest rebel conflict in the history of the continent. It was 24 years where they were in the middle of a conflict with the LRA, which was led by Joseph Kony, who some people know that name, but he was most famous for the use of child soldiers. He would kidnap children. They estimate about 30,000 that he abducted, and they were forced to kill their families, so they had nowhere else to go and fight in his army. And